Democratic Senate candidate James Talarico may be a savvier politician that some are giving him credit for. A new report reveals that the Texas legislator apparently did know days ahead of time that his interview with Stephen Colbert last month would never air on TV, despite the late-night host suggesting that it was a last-minute call by network lawyers.
According to the report from the New York Times, Talarico and his team gambled that the show would complain about the segment's censorship and that would give Talarico a much-needed boost in the polls. And that bet ended up paying off in spades. The Times report reads, days before the trip, Mr. Colbert's producers told them the network, nervous about federal regulators, would only post the interview online. The Talarico campaign had a choice: cancel the trip and crow about the Trump administration trying to muzzle him, or say nothing, film the segment, and hope Mr. Colbert would tell his audience the story of federal interference. They said nothing and filmed. The YouTube clip gained more than 9 million viewers. Donations poured in. Internal campaign polling by his opponent showed the ground shift in Mr. Talarico's direction. One of Talarico's advisors went on to explain to the Times that the attention from that appearance allowed the campaign to refocus its message right as voting began, and said, quote, a lot of that money we got in late from Colbert went to Spanish advertising.
Polling went on to show Talarico's margins in the Hispanic community gave him the edge he needed to defeat Democratic firebrand Jasmine Crockett, my favorite, in the primary last Tuesday. So sad. Well, a successful stunt then, I guess.
Yeah.
This reminds me of, you know, like, I remember, like, Andy Ngo, you don't care for him. He's a conservative writer person. You know, he has a book come out about Antifa, and then Antifa, you know, sets fire to the library where it's being sold. And I'm like, that lucky son of a gun. Why can't I get Antifa to burn copies of my book? Please, please, hunt me for sport, Antifa, because it gets you attention and it sells more book copies.
Oh,
this is the exact same
absolutely. When I was a kid, there was a book in Britain called Spycatcher, written by a very old man at that stage called Peter Wright, and the government tried to ban it. Apparently, it was a terrible book. I mean, I never read it, but like really badly written. But once something is there's an attempt to suppress something, it does help a lot. That thing becomes, by its nature, more attractive. I don't know. I mean, we were talking in an earlier segment about outrage and whether it's that outrageous or not. Talarico's campaign there seems to just have made a calculation, and I mean, I don't think they did anything nefarious. They took a gamble and they won the gamble, basically.
But it almost had, it's implying Colbert's buy-in for this gamble in some way, a little bit?
I don't know that it's implying Colbert had knowledge. I mean, it's implying that Colbert knew, I guess, a longer period before that they were not going to run it, and it's maybe suggesting that he knew he was going to complain about censorship in a way before some sort of last-minute turn from CBS's lawyers. I mean, I enjoy Colbert quite a lot, and so you know, I tend to be sympathetic to his view, but I think that's what the allegation or suggestion is.
I criticized the vagueness of the FCC's equal time rule as it applies to late night, just because they said maybe it should be enforced, maybe I don't like the maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't,
right,
which creates ambiguity. But if it was just clear, I would have I mean, they were coming up again. It was right before the election. They had had Crockett on. I mean, the rules should just be clear. But I mean, I did not. It was not a ridiculous argument to me that the lawyers to say, well, you can't just put James Talarico on at the last minute and not have Jasmine Crockett on, or any way in our network, and we have to. Was not totally. I mean, I think the rule itself is stupid, to be honest. But you got to scrap it for everybody if you're going to scrap it.
Yeah, or enforce it for everybody if you're going to enforce it.
I would just honestly, I would just scrap it for everybody, because the idea that they have enough of a monopoly on news and information that it is necessary for the government to make sure that other sides or other people are represented is just insane in our social media environment to me.
Yeah, so I think there are two sides to the debate, by which I don't mean a pro and con. I mean, there are two different discrete arguments. One is whether that rule should exist, whether there should be an equal time rule. But then the second argument is the Trump administration and or the FCC making it in good faith? It is my understanding that they were asked, will you impose this same rule on talk radio, which of course broadly leans conservative?
Right.
And they said no, they wouldn't, or they had no plans to, or words to that effect. So therefore the whole thing gets sucked into the bigger and more politically salient debate about whether the Trump administration is trying to penalize people for coverage that in one way or another it doesn't like.
Right. But all that stuff competes against YouTube and social media, and they're obviously, they can't. Their jurisdiction does not extend to those products.
Right.
Where more people saw the James Talarico interview on YouTube and social media than even would have seen it on TV if it had aired.
Yeah.
So that speaks to me of the silliness of all this. What do you think of James Talarico as a general election candidate? The assumption that I very much played into and bought into was that he was the stronger of the between him and Jasmine Crockett, because she's perhaps more appealing to Democratic primary voters, although he won the primary. Feisty, wants combat with Trump. He seems more temperamentally moderate, and so the idea was he'd be he's white, she's black, in this red state, that all those things were going into helping him. Since then, we've seen more of his old tweets, and now I'm starting to sense that maybe this is another example of like Democratic activist idea of an electable moderate person.
Yeah.
The things he says about religion and social and cultural issues are not particularly moderate. So this might be a misfire here.
Well, first of all, he's a Democrat running in Texas, and Democrats have consistently overestimated their own chances of winning statewide races in Texas, going back to the Beto O'Rourke contests. Now, then there's two separate arguments about, are you better with a moderate or someone who fires up the base? I used to think you're always better with a moderate. I have become much less persuaded of that recently, because I think politics has become so polarized that there is a real need to fire up the base. I think Crockett could have done that. I don't know that Talarico does.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that he's a real moderate.
Right.
Or that he's going to come across as a moderate.
In Texas.
Given some of the things he said in the past on Twitter that are going to be, resurfaced over and over again.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough criticism. Meanwhile, comedian Bill Maher used a blind quote to trick California Democratic Senator Adam Schiff into criticizing former President Obama, by implication. We'll be right back after this.